Hello and welcome back to another puzzle video. Today I've got something new for you guys, not only a new map, this time we're featuring the lake map. I'm also featuring something I haven't tried before, which is a mid-game puzzle. Alright, so this is not an opening, this is not the final turn. This is something a little different. I wanted to try and sort of explore some of those positions that happen in the middle of a root game, where it takes a little bit of creativity to get out of a jam or to find a way forward and prevent one player from just immediately winning the game. So in a way, it's kind of like an anti-end game, I'd say. You're preventing one player from winning so that you have the chance to move forward. And it takes some table cooperation, and that is a huge skill to develop in Root, right? It's not just a dry puzzle game. You do have to convince your neighbors to help you bop the leader. And this is a great example of how a little bit of creative thinking goes a long way in that regard. So let's start by taking a look around the map here. You're the Woodland Alliance. You're starting at 9 points, which is pretty good in this game, I'd say, given this position. It seems like it's pretty close. The Vagabond's got 10. The Eyrie is just turmoiled, so they're down to 5. And the Cats have taken this opportunity to go for a dominance victory. All right, they're looking at a mouse dominance play, and I'll just go ahead and circle those clearings. These are our mouse clearings. And it's looking like it's going to be really hard to stop this. Right, for a dominance victory to happen, it just has to get back to the Cat's turn, and they have to control 3 of those clearings, rule 3 of those clearings. So to stop that play, you've got to somehow wrest control of one of these clearings away from the Cats. Looking at the other factions, our sad Vagabond, our Tinker, is languishing in the woods after taking a ferocious beating from the Cats. Just sent him right off into the forest. So unfortunately not going to be participating in the quest to stop the Cats this time. The Birds, having just turmoiled, they lost 3 points, and they selected the Builder as their next leader. So that's 1 card in Move, 1 card in Recruit. Working off of 1 roost, has some scattered forces around, is going to find it fairly challenging to muster up the offense and the movement required to stop the Cats. Lastly, I want to talk about the Woodland Alliance. Woodland Alliance working off of 1 rabbit base. They've got 2 warriors and a sympathy just off to the right here. You know, in terms of this being in sort of the end of the opening, early mid-game type of position, this is not bad for the Woodland Alliance. I feel like it's a promising position. Just as the Alliance, you just don't have enough people on the board to be able to really do much to stop a cat force that, you know, you got to hack through 6 points of material here just to make a difference. It's going to be very hard. So what to do? It's the Woodland Alliance's turn. It seems like there's no way out, but this is a puzzle video. You know there is something we can do to keep the game going. This is one of the situations where you have to find a series of only moves in order to keep the game alive and successfully defend against this dominance victory. We are on the lake map, so we have this thing in the game. This is called the ferry, or the raft, and the ferry is one of my favorite little Easter eggs in the game. It's it's basically a way to get around on the lake. So what you do is you take the ferry and you can go between any one clearing on the lake to another clearing on the lake using the ferry, right? So you take the ferry, you go woo, and hop off at another kind of dock over here or whatever. So that's fun. The other thing about the ferry is you draw a card whenever you take the ferry somewhere. All right, very handy. And speaking of cards, to help us make a plan to advance in this game, we're going to have to take a look at our hand of cards and our starting supporters. Our starting hand of cards, we have an arms trader, an investments, and a swap meet. Swap meet says, once in Birdsong, may take a random card from another player and then give them a card. We won't be having another Birdsong until the next turn, so unlikely that this is going to help us too terribly much. Let's go ahead and minimize that hand and take a look over here at our hand of starting supporters. We have a mouse and a rabbit. Sadly, any place that we would be using those supporters to spread sympathy. Not gonna happen. First of all, it's the wrong suit. That's Fox. This one, martial law. This one, martial law. I had a question on one of my previous videos about this. Martial law just means whenever there's 3 or more warriors of a faction in a clearing, it costs 1 additional supporter to spread sympathy there. Just makes it a little more expensive, a little tougher for the Woodland Alliance to expand. That's all it means. So whenever I'm complaining about martial law, that's what I'm that's what I'm yelling about. And last but not least, we have 2 officers that we're working with up here. Okay, well, it's time to solve this puzzle, and this is really all we're working with. We don't have a whole ton of options. I mean, we can try and get over to one of these cat clearings to stop them, but we only have 2 officers. It's going to be a little tricky. So before we get into a concrete solution, if you're an advanced Woodland Alliance player, I want you to go ahead and pause the video right now and find a way to stop the Marquise from winning a dominance victory. I'll give you a few seconds there. And for everybody else, let's figure out step 1 in our plan to prevent dominance. First of all, as I mentioned, we are only working with 2 officers. We're probably going to have to boost that number a little bit in order to have any impact at all on this board. I'm noticing that we have 2 cards in hand that help us do that. So let's go ahead and spend those 2 cards to train up 2 officers. All right, there we go. We've boosted our officer count to 4. Very nice. And we've just gone ahead and mobilized that last card there. It's going to be helpful to have 2 of the same suit, kind of give us some hope for a revolt in the near future. And specifically, this is in a mouse suit. Since the cats are going for a mouse dominance, it may help to have this kind of threat in place on a future turn. For now, we have 4 officers to work with. And we're going to go ahead and move into our evening phase. And it's not immediately clear what the plan forward is. A plan that might spring to mind for you is, move, and then battle here twice to try and take out the cat presence. Little back of the envelope calculating. 2 battles there. 2 warriors, so we can deal a maximum of 2 hits. So if we deal the max of 4 hits, and we take none in return, then that will leave presence of 1 cat to 2 Woodland Alliance warriors. We would tie in presence in this clearing, and therefore prevent dominance. But that's a bit of a long shot, and it does require a lot of dice rolling. And as everyone knows in Root, as soon as you start rolling dice, it's up in the air. Anything could happen. So I don't like this as a plan. I think there's a little bit of a different idea that might work even better. Now, for those of you who caught on to what I was throwing down earlier with the ferry, you might think the same thing, right? Move, take the ferry across the lake, and then battle here twice, and hope to reduce this count to an even 2-2, tie for presence in this clearing, and prevent dominance that way. But again, once you start rolling dice, you don't know what's going to happen. So, what do? In order to figure out a guaranteed prevent of this dominance victory, we're going to have to work with another player. Because as you notice, in the turn order here, it's Woodland Alliance, and then it's the Eyrie next. So the Eyrie will have a chance to do their part to stop this dominance victory. And they want to, right? They want to keep the game going just as much as you do. So at least for this turn, you have the same aligned interests with the Eyrie. That makes you allies. And once again, this is why table talk is super important in Root. So in order to stop the cats, you have to help the Eyrie. And with that clue, if you are an intermediate Woodland Alliance player, I want you to go ahead and pause the video right now at the start of evening phase and figure out the solution. All right, and for everybody else, let's go through it step by step. The first thing to know is that there's a very special mechanic that the Eyrie has that we should take a look at in their bird song. It says, if your hand is empty, draw 1 card, add 1 or 2 cards to the decree. And then there's this third one that I feel like I always just kind of skip right over and don't read, But it actually is super important in this scenario. If you have no roosts, place a roost and 3 warriors in the clearing with the fewest total warriors. And that should give you some indication of what our next steps are. Taking a fresh look at this board, you'll notice this is the only roost on the board. And it's undefended. So one way to approach this might be to get rid of the last roost on the board. And taking a look, it looks like we totally can. What happens if we do that? Say, for instance, we get rid of this last roost. It's birdsong for the birds. They're going to get a roost and 3 warriors in the clearing with the fewest total warriors, right? There are 2 clearings with 0 warriors. This corner and over here in this rabbit clearing. Now, once this effect triggers, it's up to the Eyrie to choose which one they'd rather be at. And in order to prevent a dominance victory, it's definitely going to be this one. So now just imagine there's a roost and 3 Eyrie warriors there. They can do an awful lot to help prevent that dominance victory. That would be the cleanest way to keep the cats off of the throne. So with that in mind, let's get rid of that roost. It's evening phase. We're going to go ahead and start by taking a move over to this coastal clearing. We're going to take a second move using the ferry and drawing a card over to this clearing with the abandoned roost. We're going to battle the roost, getting an automatic hit because it's undefended. So any dice rolling here is really just a formality, right? There's not any randomness involved as long as you've kind of communicated with the Eyrie player. Lastly, let's go ahead and organize. Why not profit off of us helping out the table, right? And also, if the Eyrie does indeed prevent this dominance, they won't have enough actions to take out your rabbit base, and the cats would have to put a lot of effort into taking it out as well, and thereby weaken their own position and kind of leave the door open to be continually defeated. So they would be totally unmotivated to come and destroy that base. And there we go. We've scored a point. We drew a card. It's the end of the turn. We're sitting at 11 points. And now it's time for the Eyrie's turn. Here's the Eyrie. It's the top of their turn. They go ahead and put, it doesn't really matter. Just a card and build or whatever. They get a roost over here in this rabbit clearing. They get 3 warriors. And wouldn't you know it, they're going to recruit a 4th with the builder. They're going to use that wild move to move all 4 up into the clearing with the keep. And that ties for presence. They are tied for presence. And even if they go into turmoil, at the end of this turn, they successfully prevent the cats from claiming dominance. So that's it. That's the mid-game puzzle. That, to me, was the cleanest way to prevent the cats from just immediately winning and ending the game. This was actually based on a real position that I had in Root Digital, where the only way to stop the cats from winning a dominance victory in the mid-game was to kill off the last roost and have the Eyrie kind of teleport across the board like this. But anyway, I thought this was kind of a fun little puzzle and featured a really creative use of some root mechanics. Once again, thank you so much for joining me for this puzzle, and I will see all of you around the woodland.